Welcome to a special taped episode number 46 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, along with co-host Noah Maher and Charlie Freeman to cover the early pick 5 for Breeders' Cup Future Stars Friday, including all the preview and analysis you will need. Just quickly, real quick, we're going to go through two peripherals. You can listen to all these shows on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor as audio platforms. Every single episode that gets posted on the HHH Racing Podcast channel is uploaded to those audio platforms. Go rate, review, and subscribe over there. And while you're at it, come down below the video player here, hit the like button on this video, and hit subscribe. It really helps us out, and it will push this video out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully get more people to the HHH Racing Podcast channel. Thank you so much for doing so if you do. And if you are watching this before Wednesday, which is November 1st at midnight, you are eligible to still sign up for our brand new Breeders' Cup Power Picks. Go to hhhracingpodcast.com, and right at the top is a banner that says Power Picks Tip Sheet. You will click on that and you'll see it right at the top of the screen. It's only $20 for both Friday and Saturday. So many outlets are selling these for $40, $50, $60, $75, even $100. And we are only selling it for $20, and it has full write-ups of every single Breeders' Cup race, as well as price plays, spot plays, full pick 5, full card grids. Everything you need to be successful this Breeders' Cup will be on this tip sheet for only $20. Again, hhhracingpodcast.com for more. We are selling it until Wednesday, November 1st at midnight. So please get in on that. Guys, we're gonna get right into it. But what's going on, guys? How you doing?
Good.
Ready to get after this.
T-minus 2 days until this comes out, so I'm sure all of us are pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, T-minus 2 days until we're freaking in California.
Yeah.
So that'll be, of course, we are recording this on Halloween. So happy Halloween to all of you people out there. But like I said, guys, we're gonna get right into it here. Race number 1 on Friday is going a mile on the turf. It's the Qatar Golden Mile Stakes, full field of 8, as I bring it up on the screen now, or full field of 8, a field of 8, with the morning line favorite being the number 5, Go With Gusto, for Joel Rosario and Mark Casse. Go With Gusto was originally entered, I believe, in the either the juvenile turf or the Breeders' Cup Mile. I believe it's the juvenile turf. Unfortunately, did not get in. So Casse points her to this spot where she looks pretty tough in my eyes, but let's bring up the panel's picks right now to see where we're going. And we're actually pretty much all over the place. Patrick, unfortunately, who couldn't make it, as I said, is actually going with me on the number 5, Go With Gusto. But Charlie, we're going to point to you first. You're actually going with a horse a little bit off the beaten path on the trainer switch from our great trainer, Kelsey Danner, now going to Leonard Powell, of course, based on the West Coast. And like I said, picking up Flavian Pratt. What'd you like most about Mo Foxgiven? Besides the name, of course.
So, I mean, the name's great. I'm a little surprised, with the connections that you didn't, give the horse a little more love. But so for Mo Foxgiven, honestly, I mean, the horse is working some bullets with the 47-4 at Santa Anita, the 48-3 at Churchill. But I really just loved the late kick that Mo Foxgiven was able to show. I mean, you can see this horse, showed a really different approach last time out in the near win, but lost by a head. Just couldn't quite get there in time at Churchill after the win and debut at Colonial, where the horse kind of just sat right off the pace and then went by in a fast pace. This time decided to sit way back and then was still able to show that strong late kick, flew by the field. And honestly, if the race was another length or two, would have ended up winning the race. Obviously only has 2 starts, but took a solid step forward, not obviously from the buyer's perspective, but from when I watched the replays, I liked the improvement that I saw. And I love the value at 6-1. And as you've touched on before, it's obviously great to have Flavian Pratt whenever you're doing a race on the turf.
I mean, absolutely. And he's, of course, riding out at his old alma mater in California. So picks up the mount for, of course, a California guy in Leonard Powell. So I have Mo Foxgiven in 3rd. I completely agree with you, Charlie. It's just a matter of that last race at Churchill. I'm not sure who she really beat in that race. There's a few horses that have come back. The winner actually came back and it was eased up. So you can't really, draw too much of a line from that. But every other horse in that race, except the horse that ran last, who ran a 0, can't get worse than a 0. But all the rest of them actually went down in buyers, the other 3 that have ran since. So I'm not sure who she's necessarily faced in that race. But that late turn of foot, Charlie, I agree with you, is visually impressive. So Mo Foxgiven could be the one to pick up the pieces if stuff goes awry on the front end. Noah, you have the number 7, Charge for Gold on top, 12-1, might I add, which obviously none of us have anywhere, and I'll never talk you off double-digit horse, but I'm really interested to get your opinion on Charge.
Yeah, I'm starting us off with a bang. I mean, you gotta start the Breeders' Cup with a bang. Am I right?
Ooh.
Yeah, but with the 7, Charge for Gold, debuted going 5 furlongs at Del Mar, and was actually off the pace a little bit, which is typically not the easiest thing to do. And come August 24th, that turf is pretty dry, and it's definitely very speed favoring as the meet goes on. But then it comes back in the Speakeasy going 5 again, and just had a really bad trip. Didn't break great, stepped slow, and then steadied a couple times during the stretch as Kyle is going to pull us up. I believe he's the 3 horse.
Yes, he is.
I'm sure the connections
Right
wanted
here
him on
in
the lead in this race, and
maroon
you
right
can
here.
you can see Ricky Gonzalez is pulling and has checked multiple times during the race. But the horse, doesn't quit. And
There. There's a big one.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, she has to back out of it right there and has to start getting going again. Not to mention the horse in front is a horse that's facing Shards in the juvenile turf sprint, that and Slider. I mean, so you see the Moses basically parted the Red Seas there for the number 3 here on the inside, but unfortunately gets stuck there again. There's just nowhere to go on the inside. So definitely a troubled trip angle for sure. But hey, 12-1. If you get it that day, and this horse is actually much better than what he has shown, I mean, that could be a very good price for you, Noah. And I'll let you touch on anything more you want to talk about in a second. But I went with the number 5, Go With Gusto. Just that last race in the summer at Woodbine was a very nice race. Carson's Run, who ended up winning that race, is now entered into the juvenile turf on actually drew probably the worst out of any horse in that race. Is that, again, we're recording this the day after the draw. And unfortunately, Carson's Run, who has a similar story to Cody's Wish, a brilliant story, unfortunately drew the 14 hole, so he'll have to navigate from out there. But my boy Prince came back to win at Woodbine just a few weeks ago at 1-5 in the Cup Saucer for restricted Ontario breds. I mean, 78 buyer, but still, guys, I mean, that's still a good step that you want to see if you like a horse like Go With Gusto. And for me, he's going to be pretty far back, but a little bit closer. And ultimately, if he continues to improve, or she continues to improve off this 74 buyer, then Go With Gusto could be very, very tough for me in this spot. And I just like the running line from the maiden to the grade 1 at Woodbine. That's come back to be a very live race on paper. But you guys both have number 5 and second. Charlie, I'll dish it back to you, and then I'll let you talk about your 3rd place horse, Ultra Power, who hasn't been on the turf yet for Bob Baffert. But anything more you want to touch on that I didn't with Go With Gusto?
No, I think you kind of touched on it all really well, as you kind of mentioned. Is a little farther back there. Will probably be running a similar trip to my 6. I think maybe has shown a little more closing speed at the end, but also not quite as much, speed at the beginning. We haven't seen that kind of versatility. But certainly, as you kind of mentioned, any sort of step forward from the last time out would certainly be a very tough race for any other horse in this field to beat. And then kind of moving into Ultra Power, I just feel like, I mean, again, this horse is working forwardly. It's hard to ignore Baffert horses in California. And really, my angle with Ultra Power is simply the main 2 contenders that I like the most in the 5 and 6 are closers. So if you're looking for another horse that's going to be in the money or that can be competitive on the win, you don't want to go with a 3rd closer. You need to look for a horse with the opposite style. And that's what most Baffert horses are. So Ultra Power obviously is going to send either will be on the lead or just behind the leaders, pressing the pace, or again, trying to wire them. Either way, again, is working forwardly, looks sharp. The question is going to be, can the horse handle the turf? And also, can the horse handle the additional distance, which normally isn't ideal when you're a speed horse to try to have to keep adding distance. But you could also argue that when this horse had a hotter pace and also moved to 7 furlongs from 6.5, ended up winning going away. So they're granted against a pretty weak field, and running at Los Alamitos at 45K maiden special, which that's something to pay attention to. And I said the only other hesitation I honestly had is because it's a Baffert horse, you're probably not going to get the value that you deserve on this horse, but still could be a contender. And if this horse gets loose, could be trouble.
Noah, you also have the horse in 3rd. Anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, I agree with what Charlie said. We're going to see how this turf course plays, but ideally I would think this horse is going to be, near the front of the pack. Typically, it's decently speed favoring when it's going to be warm, and it's supposed to be like 80 degrees when we're there, which won't be a problem.
No.
Yeah, but along with what Charlie said, definitely a question when going to the turf after these two races, and you don't really know who he beat last time. But I would say neither of us are really ones to question what Baffert does with his horses.
But the thing is that I just put up on the screen right now, of course, picks up Frankie Dettori, but first-time turfers for Baffert. This is really a stat that you don't see a lot. That being this negative in the red for Baffert, of course, normally wins at 29%. First-time turfers for Baffert are 5 for 66 in the last 5 years, which is 8% and only 30% in the money. And if you go, it goes a little bit better when you go from dirt to turf, but I mean, it's not much difference. 6 for 59, only 10% and 31% in the money. And for me, guys, with a horse like Baffert, where Charlie pointed out the good point that you're not going to get the value you deserve on a horse like this, and for those stats, I'm going to be willing for that horse to beat me, although can definitely win if it takes to the turf. The only other horse I want to talk about real quick is Ace of Clubs for Doug O'Neill. Last race ran against Endlessly, lost just 4 lengths to Endlessly, who of course is running in the juvenile turf, I believe. Michael McCarthy, trainee, who's always just consistently improving. So I'm looking for Ace of Clubs. I don't really like the rail draw, but if he can improve off that 71 last time, could definitely be a factor in a race like this. I'm going 5-1-6. Charlie's going 6-5-4. Noah is going 7-5-4. And Patrick is going 5-3-1 with the addition of Lord Bullingdon for Michael McCarthy in second. Guys, switching over to race number 2. This is the first of 2 Calbred races on the early pick 5 card here. The Golden State Juvenile Fillies Stakes. Of course, as we get later, you'll see it's the Golden State Juvenile Stakes for males. This one's, of course, for females, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And it draws a full field of 11 here, guys, for Calbred 2-year-olds. Morning line favorite is the number 5, Mirinda. Mirinda for Mike Smith and Gary Mandela, the son of the great Dick Mandela, at 8-5. Grand Slam Smile is your second choice at 5-2, guys. And I'm going to bring up the picks right now, and you'll see there's not too much else going on. Most of us believe that this is an ultimately a 2-horse race here. 3 of us have the 5, but Noah, my friend, you are the only odd man out. Number 7, Grand Slam Smile, Steve Specht, a normally Golden Gate located trainer. Alvarado, also a Golden Gate rider coming over. Just connections stay with connections, and this horse definitely could be live on Friday.
Yeah, with Grand Slam Smile, I just like the fact that she's proven it here at Santa Anita. Ran an open company in the debutante 2-back, and then the other thing that I was interested in is the fact that she can sit. But a lot of times with these 2-year-olds, they're just kind of go and hope they can hold on. But I think Speck knows what he's got. He's given this horse a little time off, and I think he was just pointing to a race like this. I definitely agree. I think it's either the 5 or the 7. Only thing with the 5 is I don't really know who she beat. That was one of the last days at Del Mar at the meet, and Gary Mandel doesn't normally train a lot of horses, so this is maybe one that he really likes.
Yeah, I mean, just for me alone, Charlie, I'll let you touch on anything, and then I'll let you go on to your third place horse as well. Just that last race was just very visually impressive to me. I don't know if you ended up watching that replay, but I know Gary doesn't train a lot of horses, but I mean, this one could look very good, especially with a nice win on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's really got something special
Friday.
here. I did watch the replay. As I've kind of touched on time and time again on our shows, how I'm not usually the biggest fan of speed horses, but normally what kind of catches my attention for a horse I believe in that's on the lead is when rather than jump into that 5-6 length lead and then hold it on for a length or two, and like thank God the wire got there. complete opposite from Mirinda. This horse was able to get to the lead pretty easily, shot out. I wouldn't say shot out of a cannon per se, but still shot out fairly quickly, and it was
Yeah,
nice
so
to
it
see.
didn't break very fast at all, but still
Right.
was able to make the
But
lead.
was able to quickly, within a few strides, get to the lead, and then just completely ran away. And honestly, the horse wasn't working hard at all, wasn't getting asked as much as you would normally assume when you see how much the horse won by. And I just think, again, I think as you can see, the horse has never been hit, never really been asked all that hard. I feel like this is one of those races where, yes, it's probably down to the 5 or 7, but if Mirinda looks anything like last time out, I think this could be a route for the 5. But obviously, we have to, see what actually happens in the races.
But the point that Noah made, of course, is a lot of these horses are looking to go out to the lead. And if Mirinda doesn't, the question mark for Mirinda is if she doesn't get as easy of a lead as last time,
Right.
how good really is she? But that, like I said, visually, and Mirinda checked all the boxes for me. Grand Slam Smile is the one. This last race was what caught my eye, to where the horse could sit, as Noah pointed out. Crazy Hot came back to win. Didn't really improve any buyers or anything like that, but came back to win a stake at Del Mar towards the end of the meet. And a Pushiness, who beat Grand Slam Smile that last time out, ran the Del Mar debutante. And I'll guarantee you, even though she ran 7th, there's not a Tamara in this race by any means. But I'll let you guys go really quickly through your third place horses. We all have different. Charlie, real quick, anything to touch on with Crazy Hot?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's more of a two-horse race. Don't love going all chalk, but as you kind of touched on, even though the figures didn't look all that impressive, I did still think it was certainly progress from Crazy Hot. As you kind of mentioned, one that probably also, again, is going to have to send for the lead, because you see kind of when this horse isn't able to get to the front, even though Crazy Hot can hang in there, doesn't really stay up there, but is working forwardly, still at a solid effort, picks up Johnny V, which you can't ignore. So I certainly still think could be a contender and be competitive, just maybe not a winner.
Yeah. Hey, I love it. Absolutely. Noah, you have the number 6, Prancing Through Paris for Peter Urton. This is the horse that I was debating also putting in third. What'd you like most about Prancing Through Paris?
Yeah, I agree with Charlie. I was kind of debating between the 60 and 11. The thing that kind of tipped me was there's just, a lot of speed in the race that I see, and I don't think Crazy Hot's really going to get any pace advantage, especially from that post way out there.
Yeah.
But Prancing Through Paris is just another that I thought, trying to close into that slow pace last time against Crazy Hot. Another one that's going to get, pace to run to, and these connections have been pretty money the last 6 months.
Yeah, no kidding. You see Peter Urton winning at a 33% clip this meet already at Santa Anita. So definitely, I agree with you. Satellite Heart is who I ended up going with. That race at Golden Gate, although, we always say Golden Gate, how does it translate into Santa Anita? But last race came back, even though on the lead, still ran really well. This Golden Gate race makes you think this horse can sit. Alfredo Marquez has run 3 runners at Santa Anita so far this meet. Is 2 for 3 with 3 for 3 in the money. So Satellite Heart at a nice price of 12-1 could be one to look out for, although she does look a little slow on paper, but could take a step forward on Friday. I'm going 5-7-3. Charlie's going 5-7-11. Noah's going 7-5-6. Patrick is going 5-7-8. Guys, switching over race number 3 here. This is the race down the hill. It is the Senator Ken Matty Stakes. For about 6.5 furlongs as they go down the hill, 150,000, full field of 13 going in this race, with the morning line favorite being the number 2, the European Invader White Moonlight. Oisin Murphy rides. Bin Sur takes the training job again, 3-1 on the morning line. Second choice is Playlist all the way to the outside, but we'll talk about posts with the downhill when we get there for Johnny V and Wesley Ward. And third choice is shared between, it's Can't Buy Love for Sayas and Trombetta. Guys, switching over the picks right now, you can see we're all of us are actually going with Playlist. That's actually, like I said, we don't share picks beforehand. We just see it as it is. And all of us are going with Playlist, which is actually really interesting. Charlie, you're the resident Wesley Ward expert here. I will go to you. Yeah, that last race in the Kentucky Downs race is the one that I'm really keying on.
Yeah, for me, honestly, Playlist really caught my attention actually too back. For our astute viewers who have really paid attention to all of our shows, you may remember that was when we had our live show, went against Bowl of Cherries, Breeze Easy, who's a solid horse. And I remember that day just watching this horse and thinking, all right, I know that this horse has shown a little bit of a history of being able to, she's shown to sit off the pace, but that's not normally what Ward's known for. running against a field this tough and on the rail and being off the pace, can Playlist get the job done? And obviously you can see the answer was yes. So for me, that's what first caught my attention. And then as you touched on, and Kentucky Downs, it's tough. Ran against Private Creed, Sweet Cherry Pie, some other solid horses. And running 6.5 at Kentucky Downs is not really 6.5. It
Correct.
feels longer. So for me, knowing that it was a hot pace, having to run what feels a lot longer than 6.5 furlongs, getting what, even though it looks like isn't a cutback, is a cutback. And a pace where I think Playlist is one of the faster horses, but doesn't need the lead. I just think from a pace development and from even though it doesn't actually seem or actually is shorter, it will feel shorter. I think this really could set up nicely. And I don't know if you'll get that value, but I like the 4-1 a lot. I think Playlist is very dangerous in this spot.
And Noah, as we always touch on, or we haven't covered the West Coast on this show much, but this downhill turf, you actually tend to want to be on these outside posts. Usually drawing 12 in a turf sprint is usually death right away. But that first turn, if you look on the map at Santa Anita, it's actually a right turn. So being on the outside is no bad thing by any means.
Yeah, you basically said it. I mean, it's like the equivalent of taking a left-hand turn and being close to the rail. But yeah, they take that unique right-hand turn before they kind of go down the second part of that hill. Charlie touched a little bit about my kind of key angle with Playlist was that at Kentucky Downs that 6.5 plays more like a mile, and typically when you are handicapping these down the hill races at Santa Anita, you try and key on one thing or two things. One being if they've gone down the hill before and if they've been successful, or two, if they're cutting back from a mile to 6.5. So if you kind of think that Kentucky Downs race is a mile, then you got your cutback and then the horse is live.
You guys talked about it, man. I think it's Playlist right between the eyes, and I think that's what's worth seeing with this undercard race. I love Playlist in a spot like this, and the outside post in the 12. I think with the technical speed that Playlist has showed in the past, I really am interested in Playlist in the third race on Friday. Guys, we all have the number 2, the Euro Invader, White Moonlight coming over. O'Sheen Murphy picking up the mount, of course. But this is another runner. Noah, I'll go back to you here. Kind of cutting back per se, but 7.25 furlongs at Musselburgh. I watched that race. That was actually a really nice race from White Moonlight. I don't know if you watched any replays, but she's not really a turn of foot Euro. She's kind of a little bit grindy, it looks like, from the replays, but I think the 6.5 hits her in between the eyes as well.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. My thought was, you don't always know how good these Euros are coming over.
Yep.
But just numbers wise, those 104 to 110 ranges, if you try and translate that, that's pretty close, probably, low 90s.
Yep, that's right.
And that compares, pretty good to this field. And, we see it with the Euros that are coming over for the Breeders' Cup. Some of them, where they're in those mile turf races, they've only gone 6 or 7, but they're plenty fit to go the mile.
Yeah, and the one misconception that a lot of people take with Euros is, they're still bred to go long. They always want to go longer. It's not necessarily the case, but this horse is proven over a mile, 7 furlongs, even a mile and a quarter. So this horse should have no problem with distance. I think the 6.5, actually a little bit of a cutback, hits right between the eyes for this horse. She has been very prominent in her races overseas. I'm not sure how it's going to translate into obviously American speed versus Euro speed, as we talk about it all the time. She actually took, if you look, she's got a very interesting running line from 2019 on, then she's off until 2022. There's a 2.5-year break in her campaign, and she's come back, and I think now she's as good as ever. And the soft ground, as you see here at Goodwood, I think was just not her friend that day. She also didn't get a very good start at all. These last two is what I'm keying on for White Moonlight, on the fast synthetic and then on the good firm surface at Musselburgh. I think the firm is what this mare wants, and I think she's obviously going to get it at Santa Anita, and the little cutback in distance is what White Moonlight wants. So I think 12-2, we're pretty much getting after it there. I'll talk about real quick Elm Drive, who I have in third, and Patrick actually is going with on top. This race at down the hill at Santa Anita early in the middle of May is what I'm sure he's keying on. The only thing I didn't necessarily like that much about Elm Drive, of course, Phil D'Amato is always one to be taken seriously on West Coast with turf, but just a very easy trip that day down the hill. She can get it again for sure, but I think she's gonna have a little more contention with horses like Playlist who also want to cover up that same spot. I think Elm Drive for friends of the podcast, Little Red Feather Racing and Billy Koch, I think could definitely be live going down the hill again as she's proven it before, but especially with that 92, which definitely fits in this spot. But I think the trip is going to be the question mark, and how good of a trip can she get? If she gets one as perfect as she did in May, Elm Drive is definitely live in that spot. Guys, real quick, anything you guys want to touch on? Charlie, you have number 10. Brandon's my lawyer at 10-1 for Peter Urton. And then Noah, I'll go to you to Freedom Flyer. Just real quick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so for Brandon's my lawyer, last time out was the favorite. And when I was watching that race, my main takeaway is I think this horse will respond well to the additional distance. And I like the early speed I was able, to see from the horse, but still sitting that nice trip off the lead, which was a good sign because in the past, this horse sort of looked like a need for the lead. And when the horse couldn't, would falter. So I like to see that development. And obviously, it notes that the horse was a step slow, did not break well at all, and boxed. And I think obviously you can't really explain box any further than that. But I mean, you want to talk about a horse that was just given no chance to win, somehow manages to only lose by a head in a race where every which way that Brandon's my lawyer tried to get clear air, tried to get a chance to just blow by these horses, kept getting boxed in. So I think any sort of better trip from last time out, and you can see the buyers also certainly with a slight step up would certainly fit in this spot. So I just think with a cleaner trip at 10-1, that's incredible value. I think Brandon's my lawyer is very live. And then the other horse I thought that was interesting and is a bit of a wild card in the spot is Can't Buy Love. Picking up Luis Saez. I didn't think this horse would be 6-1. I thought I'd get a little more value. But, we've touched on before the angle of the career best buyer figure twice and then taking that next step forward. Certainly more of a closer, but also a horse where I think getting this extra distance should be a good thing. It's just going to be a question of, will that lack of early speed hurt Can't Buy Love, or can this horse get there?
Well, and that's exactly it. And I think it will be. That will be the telltale sign. Of course, she hasn't gone as long as this 6.5 down the hill. And she's getting to be 5, although she is running her best form right now. It's just a matter of how much better is she really. I just think there's a lot of other horses with more upside, but the 9 could definitely win if she gets the right trip in front of her. Obviously, the 10 as well, same type of thing, has a lot more speed, but Peter Urton and Joel's going to have to work out a trip. Most likely will be sitting next to the 4 Elm Drive out of the gate. Freedom Flyer Noah is another one that looks to be towards the front. Not necessarily best running on the front, but could run with a target as well.
Yeah, just real quick on Freedom Flyer. She kind of meets my 2 criteria. First one, she's done well going 6.5 down the hill. She won a stakes in February.
She was specialty down the hill for it's like 7 races in a row at that point.
Quite a few in a row. And then last time, she's cutting back from a mile to 6.5, and she almost got it done last time. Just got passed, only lost by half a length. And then there was one more thing I was going to say, but it completely went through my mind.
Well, if it comes back, I'll talk about
it. Oh, I think I know what it was. The horse cutting back from a mile.
Oh, it's the fact that she's that too, but the fact that she's close to Playlist and gets that close to that right hand turn.
Hey, like I said, the trip definitely makes sense. And for those of you that don't know, real quick, I'm going to put it full screen. For those of you that don't know what we're looking for, how to distinguish the downhill from the normal 6.5 at Santa Anita, it is this little star next to the distance here that designates the down the hill. I wanted to make sure I pointed that out so you guys know exactly what we're looking at when we look at the form. I'm going 12-2-4. Charlie's going 12-2-10. Noah's going 12-2-11. Patrick's going 4-2 the 13, who's Rose Maddox, who is also another one that could be live, but will need a little bit of pace to run into, I think. So we're going to move on, guys, to race number 4 here, which is as I switch the picks, the race right now with the Golden State Juvenile, the other Calbred race in the early pick 5, draws a full field of 12 in this race, guys. This race is an absolute burner. This is definitely the hardest race of the sequence, in my opinion. The morning line favorite is all the way on the rail. Dr. No for Ramon Vasquez and Brian Coroner. Second choice will be all the way more to the outside. Number 10, Last Call London, Juan Hernandez, Peter Miller, and the number 12, Michi's Express for Joel and Steve Knapp will be your third choice in this spot. And as I switch over the picks right now, you'll see Charlie is going with Michi's Express all the way on the outside. Noah, I like your thinking, my friend. I'm interested to see why you liked Magic Spoon, who I also have on top as well. But Charlie, you are the odd man out, so you're going to go first. What did you like most about the number 12, Michi's Express or Michi's Express? Not sure.
Yeah, so for me, I have to throw out the last race. Tried to switch the horse to the turf for the first time and step up to a grade 3. Clearly wasn't what Michi's Express wanted. While the horse is a closer, I think a mile again was too long and not. And I mean, you look from a value perspective, the horse had just come off of losing by a nose at 5-1 and then is 52-1. So clearly the public knew that wasn't the right spot either. I just like the fact that this horse always runs a very consistent race, likes to just sit back. And even though the horse is towards the back, is more of a closer stalker, is never a crazy amount of length. So you kind of always know that Michi's Express isn't going to be a horse that has a ton of work to do, which I think is important based off of what Noah kind of touched on, where the track tends to favor the speed more. Has some solid works as well. And, I know his run against a lot of these horses like Dr. No and Last Call London in the past. And, hasn't always gotten the best of him, although did get the best of Dr. No a few races back. For me, again, I just think it's when you look at these horses who run against each other, you just want to look at the style. They kind of talk about in fighting how styles make fights. And I think in this case, Michi Express's style fits more for going to 7 furlongs and doesn't benefit as much for Dr. Dono. I know the gate isn't ideal, and Joel Rosario is going to have to navigate a trip as this one isn't a downhill one. So being all the way to the outside isn't such a good thing. But I think if he can get this horse more towards the inside and maybe try to save some ground and then fly by late, I think, again, this distance might be exactly what Michi's Express needs.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to touch on Michi's Express, because it is a very long run up to that turn at 7 furlongs. It's all the way on the all the way on the chute, so it's going to be a far run on that backstretch. But I just don't really know. I feel like we've kind of seen all there is from Michi's Express. It's been a long 2023 campaign for this horse, and just 69 on the peak, running third to Lord Prancelot, which is, I mean, Lord Prancelot's a nice California horse, but it almost just feels like we've seen everything we need to see from Michi's Express this year. I'm not sure how much improvement there is. And I don't necessarily like to post that much for a horse, but although this horse wants no part of the front end anyway, so most likely just back up anyway, so the post shouldn't hurt too much. Noah. You're going with the number 11 Magic Spoon, who I'll show the replay, was just unbelievably green early, and to go that wide on this at Santa Anita and come flying by here, I thought it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, when you show the replay, the trouble kind of speaks for itself.
You're
the horse
looking for the number 1, guys, and to win from the rail for a juvenile.
Yeah,
it's not the easiest.
So I hate first-time starters on the rail.
See, already slow, and then just I'll let you talk through it. But look, he's like he's climbing, he's just all over the place.
Yeah, taking a little kickback right there. The horse's head is up in the air, higher than the jockey's head. But yeah, you're going to see the early trouble, and then.
And let's move to the top of the stretch. You'll see he finally starts moving here, and once he starts going, he really starts going, which is what I really like in a race, especially in these Calbred races where there's a lot of speed.
Yeah, the thing you kind of touched on it a little bit when you were talking about him, but what I've kind of noticed with a lot of this field is that they've kind of been beating up on each other.
Yep,
and they've kind of just we've seen what they can do. Look at that.
It's that last 16th is beautiful. I agree.
Yeah. But just one of the few that I thought in here that really had a lot of upside. And I don't really tend to like horses that have been going 5.5, 6 most of their career, and then all of a sudden they try and go that extra furlong. I'd rather have a horse that's naturally progressing, that's not super send on the front end and
fresh face angle, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Tiago stays with a no-name guy and doesn't go to the Knapp horse who he's ridden 4 times. It's very interesting.
I Could not agree more. You took all the words out of my mouth. And just the matter of that I touched on, there's a lot of speed in this race, as well as the Phillies version of this race. But I think in this one, I'm looking for that fresh face, and Magic Spoon also coming from the back can really provide, especially if he, for lack of a better term, professionalizes himself a little bit more and isn't as green to give the field, nice 6 lengths at the start of the race. But Magic Spoon is definitely where I'll be keying on in this race. But I'll let you guys kind of go through the field here. No, I'll let you finish up. You have the number 1, Dr. No, the morning line favorite, in second. I have him in third. I just think that main race was extremely impressive to me, and still came back to win the I'm Smoking over a lot of the horses in this race, as you mentioned.
Yeah, just, the horse in the race that really hasn't done anything wrong. The thing for me personally was I have to go with Dr. No, otherwise my mom's going to kill me because that's my nickname.
That's awesome.
We're a family-friendly show here, so I got to give kudos where it's deserved.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I got to go with No. But with Dr. No, as Charlie touched on, got beat by Mises Express in the debut, but then that second race, it was very impressive. Beating the field by 8 lengths and didn't have to do much, and then proved it again in the I'm Smoking. So just a horse that I feel is probably the most talented in here.
And I think the 7 furlongs is gonna be no problem for a horse like this. Actually Kentucky bred, which is extremely interesting, as you see here. That's it. Got to be a condition get in for sure, which makes the horse even more interesting to me in a race like this. But no, I'll let you carry it out here. You have number 4, Shitty Appeal, in third. Anything you want to touch on before we move to Charlie?
Yeah, just one I wanted to take a shot with just because there's a lot of questions about some of the underrunners. But Shady Appeal, won on debut and went to Pleasanton, which is up by the Golden Gate area, and was favored over Dreamfire, who's running in the juvenile turf. But Dreamfire started her career, going 1 turn on the dirt. So I didn't, show in that race. And it hasn't really shown up much in the last 2. But I just feel like, switch to DeSormo. He's just as you guys know, I hate his guts.
Favorite jockey.
Yeah, I completely hate his guts. But this is the time where, he hops on a horse that's, 15, 20 to 1 and he beats you. So, I'm just not going to let that happen.
I get it completely. Good luck with your plays in the race. Charlie, I'll go to you here. You have all the outside horses. Number 10, Last Call London, who's the second choice in this race. And then you also have the number 11, Magic Spoon. Anything you want to touch on before we move on?
Yeah, so I was actually kind of flipping back and forth towards the end of it. The number 6, so you have Private Gem picking up Flavian Pratt.
Yep.
I originally was going to have in my top 3, mainly just for getting Pratt. The only concern was when I watched that replay, obviously I liked how the horse kind of set off the pace, but when I kind of watched the replay, it kind of looked like the rest of the field was kind of like stuck in mud. Just looked like, obviously I love when a closer goes by the whole field, but it just didn't quite look like what you showed with the 11, where it was like blowing by competitive horses. It kind of looked like everybody just kind of stopped, and then Private Gem was like, well, I don't want to just stop. I kind of want to go win the race. But still, obviously with only running once, I think that's a horse that's interesting at a price. With the 11, you guys already touched on it.
Yep.
Love the chance for the horse who's working forwardly, and as you mentioned, kind of had all that early trouble and then flew by. I guess my only concern with the 11 was the idea that all the main favorites in that race kind of did nothing. They just kind of all went to the front and gassed out. So I don't know how good that field was. And then, I think Last Call London is the horse with, I think you could argue, for the more experienced horses, the one with the most upside. Because you can look, 2 back, raced against Mises Express and won, and lost by just a head to Lord Planslot, who you talked about as such a talented horse, and put up that 71 buyer, and kind of looked to be starting to take that big step forward. Only to then next time out lay a bit of an egg. And for me, I think the main reason why was I just don't think the jockey, now I know the jockey has a lot of experience with Last Call London, but I just think took the wrong approach. If you watch the replay, if I'm remembering correctly, went right with Lord Prancelot or whoever the favorite was in that race, right to the front, which is not this horse's style, pressed the entire time and then had nothing left in the stretch. I think if Last Call London can go more to that forward stalking kind of role, where right after the speed and the pressers is just the first one waiting to get the first jump, I think Last Call London could absolutely win this race. And yeah, I know I'm assuming a lot of our viewers when they watch are going to wonder why I don't have Dr. No No. I just think if anything, that's the horse where we kind of know what we get. And I think the horse can handle the added distance. I just don't know if it's something that'll necessarily benefit the horse. Whereas I think for Last Call London and Mises Express, if these horses can go back to their usual stalking trips, I think both of them, it could end up surprising and show some more upside. And I also just think you'll get better value on those horses.
Also, first time gelding is another thing to point out on Last Call London, which we call it the ultimate equipment change around here. So could absolutely continue to improve. Last Call London, I think, is interesting. It is a horse I'm using on my PICK5 ticket. Just real quick, private gem, guys. I mean, going from Carla Gaines, who is no slouch herself, but Mark Glatt picks up and go from Tori Alba to Pratt, guys. I mean, this is just a straight connections angle. Coming from claiming up to this race, of course, is not going to be a short task by any means. But private gem, I thought was interesting at a price just based on how hot Glad has been lately. The jockey upgrade, and now with, like I said, Glad off the claim and the horses working forwardly. Private gem's definitely interesting to me at a price. And then No already touched on everything with Dr. No. I just think the tactical speed that this horse has shown and the rail, I don't think hurts by any means. I think he'll just hit a nice pocket trip, and if he's good enough, could go by. But guys, I'm going 11-6-1. Charlie's going 12-10-11. Noah's going 11-1-4. Patrick's going 10-1-12. But guys, this is the big one, boys. I mean, for us, and I'm so glad I get to talk about this race. This, of course, is the first Breeders' Cup race that we are talking about here on Bettin N Boozin, and it is the big one for all of us, for Howard, Pete, Paul, and myself. We all have small but still decent interests in this rate, and it's not like a $20 share by any means. We have pretty good rooting interest in the number 7 Shards. I just want to put that out there right away, so no one, no collusion, no nothing. Shards drew the number 7 hole. I called on last night's podcast, and it's just such a good draw in this field, and I'm extremely excited to watch him run on Friday. And of course, I'm putting him on top. I mean, come on. Of course I am. But why would I give myself anything like that? All these schmoes are all, no one has him on top. The faith is gone, and you guys might see a new lineup for tonight's shows. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just giving you crap. But you guys have the Moto Obvious horse here. I'll bring up Equibase right now. Again, it's the Breeders' Cup Juno Turf Sprint, going 5 furlongs on the turf at Santa Anita for $1 million, and draws a full field of 12 with the 3 other also eligibles, which the also eligibles I really don't think make any difference if they get in. Maybe Asan, but Asan's the horse that we talked about in the first race on the card, so I don't think he'll be going in this spot. The morning night favorite is the number 4 Big Evs for Marquand and Michael Appleby, and then the second and third choice is shared at 4-1 between No Name Mets and Crimson Advocate, the 2 inside Weaver runners, who actually I think drew awfully in this race. So it's going to switch over the picks right now, which I already did. Excuse me. The 3 guys going against the boys are going with Big Evs. And guys, there's not too much to say on Big Evs. He looks the most formidable. He's very fast out of the gate. And I think it'll show over into American speed, as we all call it. No, I'll let you touch on him first. Just, again, looks like the horse to beat in this race.
Yeah, definitely the horse to beat. And if you go watch your Euro preview with Davey Lane, he was pretty high on this horse. But with what I've done research-wise with Big Evs, I've just seen that, he's really quick. He's proven that he can do it on firm. He popped a 104 last time, which was super impressive. And it seems like, that race 2 back was kind of a toss. Ran against Living the Dream, Highfield Princess, Brad. So, I mean, that's a damn good field.
Also, older horses is the other thing to point out there.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of speed in here, but I just feel like if, this horse is anywhere near the front end, he's got a big shot.
And the one thing I want to point out, guys, is we see Live in the Dream in this one. He was in second to Live in the Dream, and Live in the Dream at Keeneland ran a 20-4 opening quarter. So that Big Evs has the speed to get to the front in America, but he's not going to be alone by any means. On paper, Tiger Bell is also another Euro who's fast. No Name Mets, Crimson Advocate from the inside, they're both weavers. I'm not sure. I'm sure Crimson Advocate is going to have to go from that inside post. But then you have horses like Slider to the outside who's going. Like there's a lot of speed in a race like this, which sets up, of course, for the boy himself. But Charlie, I'll let you go through your top three. You know I have the same three, but you have number one, Crimson Advocate, who I talked about in second, and then I'll touch on, of course, our horse Shards. But Crimson Advocate, what do you like most about him or her? Excuse me.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, with Big Evs, as Noah kind of touched on already, looks the horse to beat, looks incredible. That 104 was an incredible step forward, and really just a horse that's game. Even though Big Evs likes to go on the front, again, isn't the fading type, isn't the type where once the going gets tough, just kind of relinquishes that lead, just sticks up in there. Other than that one race where, as you touched on, was unreal horses that are more experienced and just wasn't probably ready for that spot yet. But yeah, going into Crimson Advocate, you know, I watched in person Crimson Advocate and No Nay Mets run. I was in Florida with my grandfather watching two Wesley Ward horses that we thought were going to end up in the winner's circle. And, you know, one of them I had heard maybe wasn't going to run so well, which was in the No Nay Mets race and didn't run well. The other one, Ocean Mermaid, he had big expectations for and quite honestly ran a good race. It's just Crimson Advocate wouldn't go away. You know, the two of them, if you watch the replay, ran away from that field completely. It was a two-horse race the whole time. And even though the horse was setting decent fractions, and you can see on the same day, finished the 5 furlongs, almost a full second, which is a big deal, obviously, in general, but especially for such a short race, faster than No Name Mets, was just impossible to catch up to, wouldn't go away. And then comes back to winning the Ascot. And I remember we had kind of touched on on that day, like, are the horses that come from those Gulfstream races and go to the Ascot, are they actually like worthy of it? Are they actually even going to do anything on that day? And Crimson Advocate certainly, again, just like Big Evs, was game, showed that the horse belonged there and had a very good effort. Obviously, you know, the concern, I mean, the horse hasn't been all that active, you know, hasn't run since actually my birthday was the last time this horse ran. So now maybe Crimson Advocate's even more live to win in this spot. Obviously not the most ideal gate, but gets Johnny V, which I feel like is exactly who you want in a spot like this. And as you kind of touched on, George is probably going to make one of them go more than the other. And I feel like it has to be Crimson Advocate. So the question is just kind of going to be, can Crimson Advocate navigate the rail? But if so, certainly could be game in this spot. And then, of course, I had to put Shard somewhere. I mean, look, this isn't just because of the podcast. This isn't just because of the show. It's because of exactly what you touched on. A lot of horses are going to have to go. The main contenders are going to have to go. And as I've touched on earlier on some of these other races we've covered, if you're going with 2 speed horses, you don't do 3 speed horses for your top 3. You have to go for a horse that's going to have a different trip and a different approach. Shards is going to come up from off the pace. Will certainly get much better pace, which you have seen has kind of held back Shards in the past as some paces that aren't quite as fast as Shards would have liked. Other than, you know, last time out, the pace wasn't exactly slow, but Shards just didn't get the exact trip needed to get clean air and couldn't. So I certainly think if Sharks can get a cleaner trip and the pace is as fast as we expect, could certainly be game and get into the money and maybe even mess around and win this race if there's a complete meltdown.
I mean, look, I'll talk about him in a sec. Crimson Advocate, guys, the one thing I want to point out is he got an 88 Beyer at Gulfstream and then came back to Ascot. Even though he won, he got an 88 time form rating. So generally you take 15 to 20 points off the time form rating, which puts her right back into the low 70s range again, guys. And she hasn't raced since. I know she's been working since September, but I mean, like, I just don't know what to think of Crimson Advocate now drawing the rail. Makes me even more against her in a spot like this. No Name Mets is going to have to improve, but it's going to have to deal with rating for the first time if he doesn't want to go with the same barn mate to his inside Crimson Advocate. Big Evs, who we talked about, is extremely fast. Give me the Beat Boys, who I think is actually interesting, a little bit speedy, but still has the ability to close, which he did in this Irish Maiden here. Shards, of course, guys, I won't sugarcoat it. Of course, it's my horse. Of course, I'm going to pick him on top. But I really don't think he's that far out of it. I think he's also going to be a little overlooked in the betting. A horse who I have in third is Amidst Waves, who I'll get to in a second. Of course, running, I think he's better going 5. But, I mean, had a cleaner trip, and still not the cleanest trip, but had a cleaner trip than Shards did and only lost to a nose to our necks. So, I mean, and Shards is most likely going to be double the price at least of Amidst Waves. So I would be very interested, at least underneath, for a horse like Shards with so much speed in the race. If you're looking for a closer, the young man himself could be one to put underneath. Kelsey, first Breeders' Cup runner, but does well in graded stakes. For those of you that don't know, She trains Dance Macabre, who's a very, very nice turf runner, turf filly for her. I really think he's got a shot, guys. I really do. And like putting all my biases aside, at least underneath for a horse that's going to be running real late. He had a maintenance work after October. The horse has been coming out really well. He's shown out really well on the track here at Santa Anita. I just really like it, guys. I really like the way he's coming into this race. Slider is the last horse I'll talk about in a race like this. I think he's interesting. Coming to the turf, winning that Speakeasy Stakes that we actually watched earlier on the podcast. I just think if he can get to the lead and maybe show a little bit late, could be one to hang on, although the post is doing him no favors. And then Committee of One all the way to the outside. Post won't hinder as much as he'll most likely try to drop in, but that 12 post, I mean, it's definitely not the best case scenario for a horse like Committee of One, where I'd much rather have a post like number 7, like we have for Shards. Shards on top, baby, 749. The traders are going 417 on the screen here, and Patrick is going 427 with No Name Mets in there. Guys, going to go over our pick fives real quick here. Then we'll end the show. Charlie, you're going to go first here, my friend. You are going 456 with 57, with 2, 9, 10, 12, with 6, 10, 11, 12, and 1, 4, $96 ticket. No singles, but it's going pretty skinny in the legs that I think have opportunities to be skinny. Although that last race is gonna burn you.
Yeah, you know what? It certainly might. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I will regret not putting Shards in there, but I want me. I'm known for the smaller, more inexpensive tickets, so I had to get skinny in the legs I could. I feel like in the first 2 legs, it's very clear in my eyes that it's likely just between the 5 and the 6. Certainly, with those efforts in Woodbine, the 5 that you have on top, Kyle, could be the horse to beat. But I like the upside with the 6, and I can't risk losing to a Baffert. We've kind of talked about this with the Chad Browns and Pletchers of the world. When they're at the tracks where they tend to be good at, you don't really want to risk losing to them. The next race we already touched on. It really is just between the 5 and 7. It kind of just the question is, can Mirinda, show that repeat performance, or is the slightly more experienced Grand Slam Smile able to get the best of the field? So I feel like it's between those two. And the next 2 races we kind of touched on are wide open, and who knows what's going to happen. Don't want to risk losing to the Foreign and want to show respect for some solid time form, at least at rating indications. Love the Wesley Ward horse, not even just out of bias. I genuinely think, as we all 3 have touched on, this spot really fits. And they just wanted to put some insurance with the, if there's a meltdown, that would help the 9. And then again, I think the 10 is very overlooked and love the value. For the next race, going with the 6, 10, 11, 12. Again, we talked up how I like the outside horses. I wanted to make sure to throw in the 11 and the 6 for, those more inexperienced ones that could be wild cards in a field where anyone could win. And then I kind of touched on, I'm personally not high on Dr. No. I like the 10 and 12 as the horses that are coming out of the consistently racing against each other. And then while I think Big Evs is the horse to beat, and I was actually originally going to single the horse, I just didn't want to put that much pressure on one horse. And I know there's certainly some concern to have with Crimson Advocate, and maybe I'm biased, but for me, when I just watched this horse in person, it was too exciting of a performance to not at least include the horse on my ticket.
Hey, I get it. And, you go every which way and you want to keep the ticket skinnier. I get it, but you are going to regret it. Good luck, Charlie, with your pick 5 on Friday. Noah's going $120 ticket, upsetting the boss, going a little bit over 5-7 with 5-7 with 2, 11, 12 with 1, 4, 10, 11, 12 with 1, 2, 4, 7. Again, that's $120 ticket without a single. Noah, talk about your ticket.
Well, I thought it was fine. I thought you said 120.
I know. I'm fine. The boss doesn't like when we go over 100.
Yeah,
but it's Breeders' Cup time, baby. We gotta splurge a little bit.
The boss is none of my concerns right now. Yeah. So starting with the first race, I've got the 5 Go with Gusto is pretty obvious, and then I'm going with the 7 Charge for Gold, who, again, is 12 to 1 on the morning line is a price, and I don't think there's a ton of speed, so maybe Ricky Gonzalez, can take him wire to wire. Second race, like Charlie touched on, I think it's either the 5 Mirinda or the 7 Grand Slam Smile for Specht and Alvarado, the Golden Gate connections.
Yep.
In the third race, I could have used a ton, but I had to narrow down to 3. I went with the Ward, who's going to be tough. I went with the Euro, who's definitely going to be tough, and then I threw in the Leonard Powell Freedom Flyer on the cutback. In the fourth race, it is an absolute cluster with the 2-year-olds going 7. So I used 1, 4, 10, 11, 12. That's Dr. No, Shady Appeal for DeSormo, who's going to be 20 to 1, who I hope wins. And I've got Charlie's 3 outside, the 10 Last Call London, the 11 Magic Spoon, who's my top pick, and then the 12 Mises Express. And then in the last race, I'm not going to get burned by Shards if he wins. So I've got Shards. I've got Crimson Etiquette and No Name Mets, who are 2 of the Weavers, and then of course I've got Big Evs.
Like I said, I like the analysis and all that stuff, and I love that you have Shards in there. So good luck with your ticket. I'll go over Patrick's ticket real quick. Another $120 ticket, and I like what he does here. 1-3-5 with singling the 5 in the second leg. 2-3-4 12-13. 1-6-10-12 with 2-4-7-8 $120 ticket. Good luck to Patrick with his ticket. Now I'm taking the same approach. We're actually very similar, me and Patrick, in these tickets. I'm going 1-3-5 with singling the 5 as well in the second leg, with 2-4-9-12-13, with 1-6-10-11, with 4-7-9-11 in the juvenile turf sprint, guys. First, 1-3-5. It's pretty. Lord Bullington is the horse that I threw in there. I actually didn't throw a Sean in there, who's the European Invader on the outside, but could go either way with either the 3 or the 8. 8 just seems a little bit slower to me. I'm singling number 5. That last race was just so visually impressive. Could get burned because there's so much speed, but I think Mirinda's a standout. The next race, guys, next 2, next 3, spread as much as I could. 2-4-9-12-13. I like the 13 as I touched on who Patrick has in there. Rosa Maddox, who could be interesting. In the next race, 1-6-10-11, I think is all you need, really. The 10, the only horse I didn't touch on in my top 3 was the horse that was touched on Last Call London. And then in the last race, Big Evs, Shards, of course, the number 9 Amidst Waves, who I think is the best of the George Weaver chances to win the juvenile turf sprint. And then the number 11 on the outside, Sliders, who else I have in there, who I think will actually end up being the best speed from that outside post if he can get in and make his trip good. Guys, this has been episode number 46 of Bettin N Boozin, covering Breeders' Cup Friday, the early pick 5 with 4 stakes races, and of course the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. For my co-hosts, Noah Maher, Charlie Freeman, and the ghost of Patrick Kuenzel, it has been Kyle Roscoe. And like I said, crush your bets this Friday and crush your bets all Breeders' Cup long. Take care, everybody.